Hi, thank you for joining me today at the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo. I'm excited that you're joining me and then also Brandon. Let me introduce myself. My name is Drew Dasher, N1ER, and I'm joined today with Brandin Hess, Whiskey Lima 1 Bravo, and we're excited that you're able to come with us as we talk about engaging the future generation in amateur ham radio license testing. So just sit back, enjoy. This is going to be a great presentation where we get to just kind of share some of our knowledge about things that we've learned and things that Brandon has developed, and just the process that is used by the AARG group to give remote virtual ham radio licensing tests throughout the world. It's not just the United States, but it's actually all around the world. So with that being said, once again, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to let Brandon take it away.
And a very good hello to one and all. Let me introduce myself before going too farther into this. My name is Brandin Hess. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey Lima 1 Bravo. Again, Whiskey Lima 1 Bravo is my call sign. I hail from the state of Alaska. My Canadian call when I'm across the border in Canada is Victor Alpha 6 India Lima Sierra. That's VA6 ILS. I am founder for the Aurora Amateur Radio Group based in Kodiak, Alaska, and also founder and chairman for the Aurora Amateur Radio Group's Volunteer Examiner Program, which is a remote testing service that we provide, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on during this presentation. So the purpose of this presentation that you guys are watching today is to really cover some of the fundamentals and the basics to getting the next generation of folks involved with being engaged in fully remote testing in various sorts and various ways. We're going to talk about a little history behind it, some of the requirements set forth by any VEC that is permitting it, and some various options that you guys have for administering the exams. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that a lot of people have realized since March of 2020 is that the need for remote testing has certainly become more prevalent. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck the United States and things started shutting down in March of 2020, people were afraid to leave their homes. They were afraid to go out and travel places, and the need for administering exams remotely became very needed. It was a very much needed service, and in the beginning, the Anchorage Amateur Radio Club Volunteer Examiner Coordinator that I used to chair at one point in time, we were the first ones to publicly announce that we were doing remote testing online, which we announced that in February 2020, and then of course in the following month things started shutting down. So we were the first ones to start doing it, although shortly thereafter many groups began to pop up, and now fast forward to today, the availability of remote testing is absolutely incredible as far as the number of options you have to choose from, the different groups offering different times of the day, and just the ability for a person to take a test at a time that's convenient for them has really become a commodity in the last couple of years, and all largely thanks to a recent ruling that was issued by the FCC in 2014 and reaffirmed in April of 2020, assuring the public that remote testing was fully permissible. And so the caveat to this is when we talk about the ability to set up for a remote test, if you're an examinee and you're setting up for a remote test, what ends up happening is the technical requirements might seem a little stringent, But when you look at the requirements and you look at the amount of time it takes to set yourself up for a remote exam, as opposed to driving somewhere and waiting to do an in-person exam, you'll find yourself saving a lot of time. You'll find yourself a lot happier to do it from the comfort of the inside of your own home. And realistically, if you've got a computer with a decent internet connection, a working webcam, a web browser that's fully up to date, then really getting a remote exam is a relatively simple task. Making sure that you have the ability to do video conferencing, making sure that you've got the bandwidth for it are all imperative things. But like I said, the biggest thing is it doesn't take long to get set up. I mean, if you've got something like Zoom installed, which is what most people are using these days, and you've got a connection that's at least 5 to 7 megs down and a meg or two up, then there's no reason why you can't have meet the requirements for remote testing. So it's very easy to do. And again, the biggest caveat to it is you can test from anywhere. There's no there's no issue with testing from anywhere. You can do it literally anywhere in the world as long as you've got a reliable internet connection and you've got a way to connect to a video conference and you have a way to access the internet. You're golden. So a little bit of a history on this. Like I said a few moments ago, remote testing was authorized by the FCC in 2014 as a result of a petition that was submitted to the Commission in 2012 by the Anchorage Amateur Radio Club Volunteer Examiner Coordinator. They had petitioned the Commission at that time to authorize and permit the administration of examinations at distance or remotely, and in 2014 that became a reality by the releasing of DA 14-74, which is available on the FCC's website, and that document essentially opened up the authorization for remote testing, which up until 2020 was not a very common thing. And up until then, most remote testing that was done through the use of a vetted proctor, sending paper exams out to a village in Alaska, supervising the exam from start to finish over video. They mail everything back to the VEC. Everything's graded. It was really quite a strenuous process. But fast forward to now, and it's just changed dramatically. So one of the things that people have asked as far as getting set up for remote testing is, what are the requirements for the VEC? What does the VEC require for a group to be set up to administer remote exams? And what I can tell you, out of all the VECs that are allowing remote testing, each one of them has slightly different rules, policies, procedures, and a different way of doing things. While the rules are not standard across the board, which I believe they should be, what you'll find is, at a minimum, you need some video conferencing software. You need an exam platform to administer the test if you're doing it paperless and electronically, and you also need a minimum of 3 VEs who can administer and certify any results or any exam administered to an applicant, certify that applicant to a test that they qualify for the license that they took a test for. So, one of the things that people have talked about, what platforms are out there to use, and to date, the biggest platform that most everybody is using is a tool called Exam Tools. Their website is exam.tools. It is a modernized exam platform that has the capability of doing both in-person testing, remote testing, examinations electronically, as well as generating paper exams and everything that you need to administer a paper exam and grade the exam electronically. That happens to be a platform that is being used by, like I said, a majority of the VE groups and VE teams across the country. Also, There is another smaller platform that is used by a group of folks in California. I don't have the name of it, don't have any information on it, but I know that group has written their own exam platform, and they are using it for basically the same purpose. They're administering exams in person with it, and they're doing very well with it. Another platform that is currently out there that I happen to be the co-developer of is a platform called Ham Exam Gen. And if you go to hamexamgen.com, that is all one word, hamexamgen.com. When you load the web page, you will find a bunch of links of information to include a practice exam generator. All of that is found on the website. But what makes Ham Exam Gen different from most mainstream platforms, it's designed by default to operate one of two ways. It is designed to operate on the internet as a full-fledged web-based platform giving paperless and electronic examinations. And also Ham Exam Gen is designed to operate off-grid. And what the off-grid concept means, the platform is designed to operate on a Raspberry Pi as the web server, connected to any wireless access point through an Ethernet cable, and then everybody that's connected to the wireless access point with their laptop or other device is able to still get into the platform and take an exam anywhere without the need of an internet connection, and everything runs identically to how you would run it on the internet. So that's one of the biggest perks to Ham Exam Gen. Also, Ham Exam Gen is a platform that requires very little bandwidth. So if you're doing exams in person and you're wondering, well, what are the bandwidth requirements? To use exam.tools comfortably, you need a connection of at least 2 to 3 megs down just for the platform itself. Whereas with Ham Exam Gen, we can run the platform very comfortably on 28.8 kilobits per second and have no issues with loading any of the exams or running any facet within the platform. Ham Exam Gen, as far as disk space, overall, the entire platform takes up less than 10 megs. As a matter of fact, the latest revision to the user interface put the entire platform down to about 6.8 megs. So think about how many 3.5-inch floppies that fits on, and that gives you an idea as to how small the platform is, whereas exam.tools is into the several gigs. So there's a big difference between the two. Both platforms have a purpose. Both platforms do the job. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what platform you should use, or the decision is entirely yours. Each platform has its advantages and has their disadvantages. But from a technical perspective, if you're interested in learning more about our platform, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So the next thing that you have to take into consideration when doing remote testing is, well, coordinating volunteer examiners and setting up exam sessions. It realistically comes down to, well, if you've only got 3 or 4 people doing it and you're a small group, the questions you've got to ask yourself, well, what days of the week are we willing to do it? What times of the day are we willing to do it? And, what would be the job of each volunteer examiner aside from administering the exam and monitoring the examinee to meet the requirements set forth by Part 97 of the Commission's rules. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. What I tell people is a successful remote exam session typically consists of at least 6 or more VEs on a call if you've got more than one applicant. So something to kind of gauge yourselves on, and of course we can talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A session. So the other thing that we talk about when it comes to remote testing and kind of getting people actively involved is, there comes a point where you have to eventually recruit folks to serve with you. This is certainly an unpaid labor of love, as I like to call it. And one of the things that we have to really focus on is who wants to serve, who wants to give back in a very unique way and use technology as well as a good, reliable internet connection and help people get into the amateur radio service while administering their exam within the comfort of their own home. So being able to recruit that special type of volunteer examiner for the purpose of being able to do a service like this is very important. Making sure you have the right people who are serving with you, who understand the implications of remote testing, have the technological wherewithal to do it. All of those have to be taken into consideration. So one of the things that I would like to talk about is a little bit of the service that we've done under the Aurora Amateur Radio Group's Volunteer Examiner program. As I mentioned before, at one time I ran the Anchorage Amateur Radio Club VEC as their chairman, and on December 1st, 2020, I had resigned my position and began doing remote testing on our own under the auspices of our club, which is the Aurora Amateur Radio Group. On December 2nd, 2020, we began our remote testing service, and we haven't stopped. We've administered exams to nearly 1,500 people. We've given exams on 5 of the 7 continents worldwide, and we have seen a lot of people and from all walks of life. So one of the first little stories we'll talk about is Yakutat, Alaska. We had a guy who queried us by filing an application to test with us, and when he applied, he indicated to us that he was in Southeast Alaska, and Yakutat technically is in Southeast Alaska. I say it's barely, but it is in Southeast Alaska. But he emailed us and let us know that he was wanting to test first technician and general, which he did, and passed them both. But one of his issues was he was very concerned about his satellite internet holding up. And one of the things that I told him through email conversation back and forth was, if run this program, and it's a program that allows you to find the fastest DNS server, and let's see how this turns out. So basically, he ran this program, got the fastest DNS server, and applied it into his HughesNet modem, had everything rebooted, and surprisingly, he came and tested with us, and despite the delays that we had, because HughesNet does come with a latency or a delay, we were able to give him his test without incident and without too many problems. When we tried to test a Zoom call with him before he did the DNS, I was very surprised that I got more than 90 seconds into a Zoom call, but within 2 minutes the call cut out and he was having issues with his internet. So we did a couple things with him, and so he was my first true satellite internet remote exam. Challenging to get everything up and running, but I would do one of those all over again if and when the time comes. So another group of people that we have had the opportunity to test, we have given exams to members of of the United States Armed Forces that are stationed overseas. Me being medically retired and a disabled United States Army veteran, I can personally attest to the willingness and the need for license testing for those who are active duty stationed abroad. We have had the opportunity to give exams to active duty military in Korea, Japan. We've given exams to people in Iraq, given exams to people in Germany, given exams to people in Kuwait, Qatar. And then the one that I will never forget was an applicant we had test with us. He was in Israel, and he was on TDY over there, taking his test with us at 2 o'clock in the morning. And of course, he's taking it up on the upper floor of the building that he was in. And as you looked behind him, you could see clear into the city. He was right on the Palestinian border, and he was in the middle of taking his exam early in the morning over there, still dark, and he was in the middle of his technician exam, and we saw this huge flash of light way off in the distance, and then just a couple seconds later, we heard a very large explosion, and the guy that was testing spun his head around real quick to see what it was, and he thought nothing of it because he turned his head back around, got back to his computer screen, and finished his exam. And then come to find out, they had some bombings going on at the time that were very close to where he was sitting, and some of those flashes were less than a couple of miles away from him. So We were watching it on camera. It was a very tense moment for him, and startled some of my VEs. And I think it's something that a lot of us will never forget. So that was one of the interesting stories that we have had with our overseas military. And then last but not least, one of my ultimate favorites. You know, when we talk about remote testing, we talk about being able to give exams to anyone, anywhere, and we truly mean that. And the reason why I say that is twice this year, and soon to be 3 times this year, we have had the dubious honor of giving remote exams on the continent of Antarctica. We have given exams at McMurdo Station. We had a young lady who worked as a weather observer for the National Science Foundation at McMurdo Station. She was down there. She tested with us for her tech in April of 2021. She was ended up getting stationed down there, and in May of 2022, she upgraded from tech to general, and she did it from McMurdo Station. I have to tell you, in setting that particular exam session up, it took almost 6.5 months of coordination to make sure, number one, she had the bandwidth to do it, number two, she had the time to do it, and number three, making sure that I had a team that could be on to the wee hours of the morning to do it. But she was my first one, and come to find out, they now have a continuous internet, satellite internet connection down there, which helps tremendously when it comes to scheduling the exams. It means we don't have to worry about satellite pass schedules and that sort of thing, at least with that particular station. So it was a lot of fun giving that exam. That was our first remote exam session, and that was also the first time that a fully remote, fully paperless exam was given, and that was all done through the power and intuitiveness of our exam platform, Ham Exam Gen. So then the other time in Antarctica that we did, it was field day weekend of this year, and we gave exams to 12 applicants at the Amundsen Scott Station, which is literally at the geographic South Pole in Antarctica. That one was a lot more challenging, and the reason why I say that is that particular exam session required us to get a satellite pass schedule that was long enough to give exams to all 12 of those applicants. When we did the exam session, we had a 3-hour and 10-minute satellite pass from start to finish that we had to work with. We had 12 people testing, and we administered a total of 25 exams in that 3 hours and 10 minutes at the South Pole. It was wee hours Sunday morning, New Zealand time, which is the time zone they use at the South Pole. And then, of course, myself being in Alaska and VE scattered all over North America, we were able to pull it off for them, and gave them everybody that tested with us walked away with a CSCE. We actually had 2 people walk away having passed all 3 exams in one sitting, and we did all that in 3 hours and 10 minutes. It was quite a remarkable feat. We were very pleased with the results, and we've got another exam session coming up down there, so we're looking forward to it. And all that was done with the power of Ham Exam Gen, which has been an absolutely tremendous blessing for us, and the things we've been able to do with it have been phenomenal. So those are some of the stories that I wanted to pass along to you guys. You know, these are some of the things that you have the opportunity to experience doing remote testing. You get to meet people from all walks of life, and you get to really meet people literally on every corner of the globe. And so that those 2 sessions have given a whole new meaning to remote testing, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So, you know, one of the things that I have been asked, what's the importance of electronic web-based remote testing? Why is it still important? Why is it important today, and why would it be important going into the future? You know, one of the things that the younger generation clings to, they cling to technology. They cling to a modern look and feel to how they do things. They cling to that stuff. They really latch onto it. And you know, when it comes to license testing, the days of a 12-year-old boy or a 10 or 12-year-old boy or a little girl taking a test with pencil and paper and filling in the bubbles, I think those days are essentially gone at this point. And why I say that is with the advent of technology that allows us to deliver an exam on any device, anywhere, it opens up a whole new world of being able to use that technology, leverage that technology in our favor to ensure that the younger generation has the opportunity to get licensed using a means that, in my personal opinion, is more engaging from a visual look and feel than trying to sit down and do a paper exam. And from an organizational perspective, it has a tendency to eliminate a lot of the administrative burden between organizing paperwork and all that sort of thing. Just as a quick example, both platforms, Exam Tools and Ham Exam Gen, have the ability to export all your paperwork in one file in the form of a PDF document, so you don't have to organize anything anymore. Literally, it's all done for you. You just got to click a couple buttons and it's a done deal. It's very, very handy. So, bridging the gap between the folks of old who want something that they can easily use. So they want ease of use, they want simplicity, they want KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid, as I like to call it. But they want the KISS method in doing these sorts of things. So being able to bring the younger folks on board who can train some of the older folks, and allowing something like a simple platform to bridge the gap is very important for license testing going forward. And I believe that given the right formula, remote testing, online testing, electronic paperless testing is truly going to become the way of the future. And I think we're already seeing it. We have been seeing it in the last 2 years, and I think the best is still yet to come. From another perspective, we have groups across the United States who are giving in-person exams, and they have been doing it the old-fashioned pencil and paper way. And I'm not sitting here to judge them. I will not judge them, because I myself have given thousands of exams, pencil and paper. What we have that other platforms don't have, as far as Ham Exam Gen is concerned, is we have the opportunity, as I've mentioned before, to run a complete exam session off-grid, being able to integrate that 21st century technology and that same look and feel that you would have taking it remotely or over the internet in person, and being able to allow children who are young, who are computer illiterate, device literate, to be able to take an exam and have a modern interface, modern look and feel that's easy for them to correspond with, easy for them to use, and works very well for them, and is appealing visually as well. So being able to offer that going forward, I think a lot of teams across the country should look for something like that. They should have the opportunity to be able to offer in-person testing using something as simple as an off-grid exam platform capable of rendering a service like that without an internet connection, and that's the beautiful thing about it. So those are just a couple of things as far as the importance goes. All I can tell you is that I believe remote testing is here to stay. I believe that paperless web-based testing is here to stay. And I think as time progresses, you're going to see a tremendous push for even more modernization and more simplification of how exams are delivered, and the various means and methods to deliver those exams. I do expect that to continue evolving as technology improves. So I think it's all coming. So sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, and thanks for flying to friendly skies of United. No, just kidding. Don't do that. Anyways, so the last thing I want to talk about this morning, or whatever time of day it happens to be, for those of you who are going to be watching this later, I want to talk a little bit about our volunteer examiner program. And I'm taking this opportunity as the founder for the Aurora Amateur Radio Group and the founder and chairman for the Aurora Amateur Radio Group Volunteer Examiner Program to kind of give the plug for what we do, for how we've been doing it to a lesser extent, and to give an open invitation. So our program, as I've said, was founded on December 2nd, 2020, as a result of me discontinuing or stepping down or resigning from my position as chairman for the Anchorage Amateur Radio Club, VEC. I felt it was time for me to embark on a different in a different direction, and I've done that. When I started this, we had 9 VEs that originally were serving with us, and at one time we were close to 50 VEs on our roster. We're now down into the 30s, I believe, 35 or 36 on the roster as of this recording. Um, but we do fully remote and proctored remote exams to anyone anywhere that is willing to meet our requirements. What separates us from a lot of organizations, we are more than just an exam team. We are like a huge family. We treat each other like family. We afford each other the dignity and respect like family. And we do the same thing for our examinees. We treat them like family. And the testimonials page on our website clearly says it all. Start reading through it. I think you'd be very surprised at some of the comments people have left behind relating to the service that we provide. We are serving under the auspices now of the W4VEC. I have the dubious honor of being the first remote exam team under their volunteer examiner coordinator, and lots of remarkable things have been happening. So, just a quick plug for us. We love what we do. We're very passionate about it. And if you are interested and you want to learn more and you want to serve with us, please feel free to visit our VE Programs website, which is auroraveprogram.org. Again, auroraveprogram.org. And as a closing remark, everything that I've talked about in today's presentation is available in the form of a PDF document that all of you should have access to. All the hyperlinks for all the things that we've talked about are all in there, and everything that you need to know to get set up, and everything you need to do to become successful should you want to do this on your own, or if you want to join a remote testing team that is truly committed to what we do and and focus on quality as opposed to quantity. You're more than welcome to join us, and we would love to have you. So with that, I want to personally thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to this presentation today. I'm sorry I didn't get to bore you with PowerPoint slides. I felt that was not justifiable given what I was going to be presenting to you, but I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I truly appreciate it. And with that being said, I will pass it back over to Drew, and we'll open it up for questions. So again, thank you so much. And 7-3 from Whiskey Lima, 1 Bravo. Drew, take it away.
Thanks, Brandon. That was a great presentation. With that being said, that concludes everything that kind of Brandon and myself wanted to talk to you about. But at this point in time, we want to open it up for questions. So feel free at this point in time, if there's anything that you have questions about, whether it's about process or tools or anything, feel free to throw those out, and we're going to answer those questions at this time. All right, all right. Hello, QSO today. Thank y'all so much for joining us for that presentation with Brandon. Unfortunately, Brandon is not able to make it today for the Q&A, and so I am joined by Tim Davis, and I'll let Tim introduce him here in a second. But I just want to introduce myself one more time, and then we'll kind of get into the Q&A over there. While I'm introducing myself, feel free to use that chat function that you should be seeing in the presentation. Ask your questions in there, and Tim and I will answer those as we get them. Once again, my name is Drew Dasher, November 1 Echo Romeo, and I'm coming to you live from Houston, Texas today.
Oh, is this my turn?
Yeah.
I am Tim Davis. I am Whiskey 5 Victor Tango. I am coming from the North Dallas area in Texas. I am also the treasurer of the Aurora Amateur Radio Group. It's awesome to be a part of this group. So, feel free to ask your questions, and we'll be here for a little bit to answer them.
Thank you very much, Tim. And I just want to throw out a reminder to everyone that's watching on this presentation. There is a link, and Brandon talked about it in the presentation. There's a PDF that has a lot of links for more information. It has some links to the FCC. It has just some different things. If you have further questions on what remote testing looks like what are those rules and regulations, like what do I have to do, go click on that PDF and you'll kind of get some other things there. All right. With that being said, feel free to start throwing those questions in the chat, and Tim and I will try and answer those.
Looks like we've got a comment here from Donald. We definitely appreciate the kind words, and feel free to let us know if we can help your ham group at the church out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donald, for that comment. And I will say, so interestingly enough, Tim and I were kind of talking about this before the presentation. For those of you who are just kind of starting to dip your toe in the pool of remote testing, what I will encourage you to do is start using some of these online platforms like Brandon talked about, whether it's exam tools or Ham Exam Gen. Start using those for your in-person testing. So that way it gets your VE team kind of familiar with how the software works. It lets you just kind of ramp up to the point where now people no longer have to show up. Now you can just kind of put that out there on a schedule and you can have that software fully utilized. So yeah, Donald. And I think a lot of people are kind of where you're at, like doing in-person testing, but also, how are we going to get that next generation on board? It's going to be going to this computerized stuff. So thank you for that
Can
comment.
also help you from test management perspective. If you're using the platform there in person, then you don't have to have all the paper. You don't have to sit there and grade by hand. Everything is done on the platform, and then you can digitally submit that up through the VEC. Once the session's over.
Absolutely. And one other thing that I'll throw out that Brandon didn't actually talk about, but this is something else to keep in mind. Remember the old days of testing. You actually have to come with a check or you have to come with money, and somebody actually has to keep track of all that. And I know, accounting and all that sorts of stuff that comes with liability. With these remote platforms, I believe that Brandon and AARG uses Square in order to do total electronic payment. So now there is no cash that's passing through anybody's hand. Now that is totally electronic at the end of the day. We have it set up so that the FCC will come and once a month, they come and hit the bank account because we have a credit card, but all of that is electronic. So it takes away a lot of that. Okay, what did I do with that check? What did I do with that $20 bill? And having to keep up with that. So that's something else to throw out there.
And I see we have another question here from Douglas Victor Alpha 3 DGD. And it's, are you able to test operators in Canada remotely? And with our platform specifically, it is not currently set up to accept that because our program just does the US testing remotely. But I do know on the back end of the platform, they are inputting the Canadian tests and stuff like that. So I believe very soon that will be available. And honestly, if there is a VE that works with Canadian licensing and that's something that you would like to do, we're taking feature requests. Feel free to let us know, and I'm sure that's something that could be enabled relatively quickly because of the way that the platform works. I mean, all of the scaffolding is pretty much already built. In order to make, to enable Canadian testing, so to speak, we would just have to create that question pool, make sure that it's correct, and it would generate the tests. So that definitely is something that can be done relatively easily if that's something you're interested in.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on what Tim said, there are a couple of things that I want to throw out. Number one, as far as the Canada remote testing, I believe, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, and Tim, maybe you can help me with this, but I believe there are Canadian VEC groups that do have the ability and are currently giving Canadian remote tests for amateur licensing. I don't have those off the top of my head, but if you do a quick Google search, I know for a fact there's at least one group that's doing that. And I do want to give y'all an email address, president@aarg.club, president@aarg.club. That's Brandon's email address, and he wanted me to pass that along to y'all. If there is something that Tim and I are unable to answer, or downstream you start thinking about this in your head, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, remote testing is the answer to everything, and you want to follow up, shoot Brandon an email at that email, and then we'll see if we can get that.
And I see a follow up from Douglas here of what's your site. So it's going to be hamexamgen.com. So HAMEXAMGEN.com. and that's going to be our exam platform website. And I believe we have contact links and stuff like that through there as well. Yes. So if
Absolutely.
you have questions or anything, there's definitely a contact us page that you can go through and shoot more questions or ask for more info.
And Douglas, I would also check that PDF as well. There may be a link on that as well. I'm trying to think, but I believe so. All right. And then one other thing while y'all are still typing in those questions, I'll throw out just kind of a passion that I have for why did we even want to talk about remote license testing here? I think a lot of the times, a lot of people talk about, well, younger people today, they have social media, radios aren't social media, communication and this, that, and another. And there's a lot of attention that's paid to, well, we need to go to more digital. We need to, tweak the radio platform. That's after you actually get the people licensed. You can start worrying about that. But what I really see as a choke point on trying to just get people introduced to the hobby is making it convenient for them to get licensed. In this day and age where especially kids went through COVID, where they were in school 100% of the time on remote, they're used to working on computers to take tests, to get licensed to do stuff, study for driver's license exams, whatever that is. And so this really is just that natural progression in amateur radio, just to utilize computers, utilize iPads, whatever it is, to really engage kids, to engage the younger generation. Maybe they don't want to wait once a month to go in person to take a test somewhere. Maybe they live 50 miles away. Whatever the case may be, this really is just a natural progression on that.
Well, I think it's just a good step towards I don't want to say bringing the hobby into the future, but making sure that we are enabling the future of the hobby is, you got to kind of, meet in the middle. You got to, enable them the way they want to be enabled, which is online, in their rooms. And I know that we've given quite a few exams to, minor folks. I believe the youngest was 8 that passed the technician exam. Um, and it is really awesome to see them get enabled. Usually it's because their parents are, hams as well. But it's really cool that we have the ability to do this because there are some young people that would be interested in the hobby, but like Drew said, just aren't going to show up once a month or just don't want to wait for once a month. So this is definitely a way to kind of make sure that everybody gets taken care of, and also when they want to, because the exam schedule, when you're doing remote, it's a lot easier to get VEs together to do this kind of thing, on the week when everybody's at home, as opposed to just waiting until like the third Saturday of the month. So it gives you more opportunity to enable more people to get their license.
Absolutely. And I mean, one other thing that I'll kind of point out is not everybody is comfortable, in this day and age, like being in large groups, there's
Yep.
still some hesitancy there, whether it just be personality, whether it be, COVID in certain areas. I mean, there really is the need for what's my alternative? Hey, I really wanted to get into ham radio, but I'm uncomfortable about showing up in person, whatever the case may be. And so this really just kind of gives an alternative thing for people that are just kind of uncomfortable in large group situations. I
For
know
sure.
this past weekend that I went and I did some testing with a group, and there were 20 people that were in a small little room, a community center. There was lots of coughing and this, that, and another. And I mean, I won't say that I felt uneasy, but it really kind of where we're coming from. It's just kind of it kind of made me think like, it's just the day that we live in. And let's see,
We have a
James, I see
request
you
for the
had
PDF
a
link.
question. Yeah, so the PDF, for those of you who like are able to pull up the schedule on QSO today, where you actually saw the click here to enter this kind of discussion group, there's going to be a PDF link that's underneath there. It's like a URL, a real long URL. If you just click on that, that's going to bring up that PDF. And if you are unable to find that, shoot a message over to President at aarg.club, and I or he will be more than happy to shoot you a copy of that PDF if you can't find it.
For sure.
But that really is just a page of the links.
Yeah.
Tim, Tim, do you have a favorite story as far as like doing remote testing? Like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like something that sticks out in your mind or
Yeah. So my first zero to hero as a VE was really impressive. Like, sitting down and having somebody just knock out all three exams and being the person that got to, sign that CSCE, that was really cool for me. I really enjoyed that. Um, I took all of my exams online remotely, all three within, I think it was like a month and a half or something like that. And my brain was mush by the end of that. I simply couldn't imagine just sitting down and knocking them all out. And that was one of the most impressive things I had seen, and they just breezed through it. They busted out the pen and paper when it came to the extra, and started doing math. But it was really really cool to be able to do that in one session.
Absolutely. In mine, so mine just actually happened a few weeks ago. Brandon talked about the Antarctica session, and that was a fun session to do. But we
Yep.
actually had a 12-year-old who tested for his extra a few weeks ago, and like this
Oh
kid
wow,
was so yeah, and he like aced it. I think 47 out of 50. But yeah,
that's rad.
put me to shame. But I mean, he was so excited, guys. I wish that I could share like a screenshot of his face, but his dad was there to share in the moment. His dad was an extra, but just seeing this like 12-year-old kid's eyes light up as he was excited to get into the hobby, like he knew that he had studied hard. And we talked to the dad afterwards on Zoom, and the dad's like, yeah, he studied all summer for this, like, on the weekends he would study like 2 or 3 hours. The kid was engaged in it, and just like
Yeah.
seeing the ability just to be a small part of that and just afford the kid an opportunity to be able to do that. I mean, dude, it was great. And to me, that's
Seeing
what the hobby is about.
you brought out a good point there of like, sitting there talking to somebody after the exam. Um, I've worked with a few remote exam groups as a VE, and some of them are just focused on numbers. It's just, let's get 100 people done on this Saturday. And I mean, yeah, that's cool. But how many of those 100 people are just going to get their tech license, never use it, and then it's going to expire in 10 years? With us, it's, hey, let's get your license now. Let's start talking for a little while. Let's talk about what kind of radio you have already or which one you want to get. Let's recommend it to you if you want. And we've got so many folks that like at the end of the session, since we all just kind of sit around and chat, on Zoom for a while afterwards anyways, there's folks that just got licensed that just kind of hang around and talk of, hey, what kind of radio are you looking at? What part of the hobby are you most interested in? Because there's so many of us that are so different and from different areas that we have a different point of view. Maybe one is an expert in one thing or another. So it's interesting, that we can help enable people to not just get the license and sign the paper and say go away, but hey, how can we help you be successful in the hobby? And that's one thing that I appreciate about the club the most, is that it's not just about stamping a bunch of licenses. It's actually getting people into it and enabled more.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, Tim. And I'm sure that there are, clubs around the country that are engaged in that same sort of thing. Like it really is about the
Yep.
camaraderie. At the end of the day, the hobby is kind of like the window into that. With that being said, guys, like as y'all are just, if there's any other questions, feel free to ask. But I kind of just wanted to end the session. We've only got about 10 minutes left before it's time to move on to the next session. But I kind of wanted to give an overview of what our process looks like. And Brandon definitely covered this. But just to kind of make it crystal clear, I wanted to just frame it out. This is what a remote testing session could look like. And so Brandon stated this, but we start off with Zoom. So it really is just kind of the Zoom platform is what we use for our video conferencing, a lot of the face-to-face stuff. What we do is we require our the people that are coming in to test to have a link into the meeting, and they actually have to have two devices for any testing session. We have to have a device that's mounted on the main computer where they're taking the exam, so we can see a full-on face. We want to make sure that the person isn't changing, the person isn't switching. And then we also require a second device to be kind of on the side. And the reason why we need that is because we want to be able to see hands. We want to be able to see like who's coming into the room if there's anything. We want to see what's on the screen because it's important to keep a secure testing environment, make sure that they're not bringing up other windows and stuff like that. So we use the Zoom platform to make sure that all our video needs are met. The second thing that we use is Discord. Discord is what the VE team uses in the background to chat with each other if we see something going on. Discord is kind of the primary means for that. The best thing that you get out of Discord, number one, it's free. Like, so that's great. But you also were able to invite people that passed the test afterwards to come into a chat room, and they can engage with us, ask about radios, they can ask about, future testing stuff, whatever it is. But that's how we build the community. So Discord is the way that we do that. And then the third important piece is the exam platform. And Brandon named off a few of those, but we use the Ham Exam Gen platform. And the reason why it's slick, the reason why we love it and we use it is because it's small and nimble. It doesn't eat up a lot of resources. It is designed in a way where there's stop signs where it's very hard to screw it up. Like, you can't click something and break the entire system and just watch it melt down in front of you. It really is so small that you can actually stream it under 7 megs to the South Pole with a satellite. And we're running Zoom and the exam platform at the same time. So I'll just kind of let you think about that for a second. But that's why it's ideal for us. Tim, any comments on the process or anything I missed on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. And, it's funny how many people get told they're hired during our sessions because as soon as somebody gets their general at the very least, or if they go through extra, they're immediately asked, when they want to come back and, take the VE exam and, join our ragtag bunch of misfits, I guess. And it's very cool. I mean, we're all volunteers. We're kind of doing the thing. So we take every chance we can get to see if somebody else would be, interested in coming to help out. And in all fairness, because of the way that we do it, because the service that we provide is a little more personable and personal. Um, we actually have, I would probably say, a more positive number of folks that end up coming on and doing that versus folks that say they don't have time or aren't interested.
Absolutely. So if we're imagining here, everybody that's out there, everybody that's thinking about doing remote testing, I want you to imagine with me for a second. So imagine a place where now you're working in a cashless environment. Everything is paid for online. Like, you have an account that's set up where everything goes, but you are not physically handing money and trying to mail that somewhere. All the documentation is taking place online. You don't have to worry about physically signing documents. You don't have to worry about physically, taking all these forms, make sure that you didn't leave something out, make sure that something didn't inadvertently get printed out. Like, this is all electronically packaged. And at the end of the session, you're able to hit send once everything is signed off on. You're able to send that to your VEC. And then that gets processed to the FCC within 24 to 48 hours if it's, testing during the week or something like that. So that is the biggest thing and the biggest difference that I'll throw out there. These new hams, these guys that are going for text, they want that call sign like tomorrow. And with some of these
Yeah.
in-person paper testing things, and I'm sure Tim can attest to this, you're going to be waiting a week, 2 weeks maybe, once all the stale mail gets through and stuff like that. Our group, it's not unheard of if we do a Thursday night session, they have a call sign by Saturday, as long as they're paying their fees and stuff like that. So, I mean, just throwing that out there is another benefit to
Yeah.
this.
So I see Bill here has a question about, do you have to be in a remote area? So that was one thing that way back when, before COVID and stuff like that, there was proctors involved and it was kind of a whole big thing. And the groups that did it really only did it to service folks that were in, far off rural areas and stuff like that. These days, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, we've given remote tests to people in the middle of New York City who could find a test somewhere around there pretty easily. Remote testing these days is all about convenience. Like, could I drive 10 minutes down the road to the monthly test for the local club? Yeah, sure. But why would I want to when I could just hop on Zoom for 35 minutes on a Thursday night? So you do not have to be in a remote area. And that's to either take a test or to serve as a VE for remote exams. Can you give a VE exam remotely? So that's interesting because they're like it depends on the VEC. Some don't have VE exams. For the Aurora Amateur Radio Group, we do have a VE exam, and it is built into the Ham Exam Gen platform, and that is done remotely. So that way you can go through and not have to, go and take a test somewhere to become a VE. And I mean, even through like ARRL and a few other of the VECs, all of their tests are kind of remote. You just fill out a PDF or you go on and do the form or whatever. I guess the answer is it depends. But for most VECs these days, especially if they are a remote testing one, they're probably going to have a remote VE exam as well.
Yeah, and going back to what Bill said, Bill, that's a great question. So the particular group that we work with, the AARG group, the only limitation to testing remote is you have to be a United States like citizen. You have to have some sort of tie into the United States, and we check that via passport, via some sort of official documentation. Now, if you're on a military base, in some faraway country, or maybe you're living in Canada part time. It doesn't necessarily matter where you're at. It just matters that you have a tie to the United States and one of the things that the FCC accepts. So we always check IDs. Like we will not give it to someone that's not a United States citizen or has like ties to the United States. Like there's definitely guidelines. But as far as where you live, no. Like feel free to test whenever you want to with a remote exam. No limitation on that. And then, yeah, James, if you're interested in becoming a VE, I would check with if you want to do remote stuff, then check out kind of with some of the groups that Brandon threw out there. Check out AARG. I'll go ahead and give a plug for that. If you're wanting to do something locally, then check with your local club because, like Tim said, it just depends on what deck it is.
Yeah, if you're interested in, working with us, aarg.club is going to be the site that has our information for the radio club, and you can find the VE program links inside of that website as well. So Bill, you're asking about the cost. Are you talking about our exam cost per remote exam? Could you clarify that? If that is what you mean, then our exams currently for remote are $12 for our remote exams, and that will vary from group to group depending on if they're a subgroup of a VEC and they have to, pay the VEC funds and stuff like that. So really, the ones that I've seen are generally anywhere from like $10 to $15, give or take, for the remote exam.
And that really does, like Tim said, that varies by the VEC, by the governing authority of the
Right.
VEC.
And
And
also,
that's
some VECs allow for retakes, some don't. So that also varies from group to group. So it really, some folks for remote exam. Yeah, correct. So like for AARG, our fee is $12. That does not involve any of the FCC application fees or anything like that. It just covers the remote exam.
Yeah, and what I've noticed, and this is one other thing that I'll just kind of throw out. One thing that I have noticed is because the FCC is now charging that $30 fee, that's really the slowdown in this remote testing kind of platform. What we always tell people that come and test with us, depending on day of week and when the FCC is going to be processing batch files and whatnot, but what we always tell people is pay that FCC fee as soon as possible because unfortunately, if we upload your testing stuff at the end of the night. Like we do that within 10 minutes after closing out a session. We upload that, the FCC has that. That doesn't progress any further until they pay their fees. So it really is just kind of
Right.
like bogged down on that $30 fee.
And it also depends on the day too. Like, so we've had people get their call signs like a half a day later on the same day, as long as everything's paid and the FCC is processing on time and fast. Um, Doing the digital batch submissions and stuff like that on the back end through the VEC over to the FCC, it makes call signs so much faster, and it's a lot better for folks instead of doing like the paper tests and then they have to submit the paper files and do all the thing, and it could be weeks. Now these are folks hitting F5 on ULS, later that day to see if they've got their call sign.
Absolutely. And I'll throw out again that Discord. So Discord has been really good for us. Because if you get some overeager text, they're like, man, I haven't got my call sign yet, where it's at. That's a great way just to kind of calm them down in the background, talk to them on a one-on-one place and say, like, did you go check this ULS site? I had a guy this past week that was like, yeah, I submitted my fees. I haven't got anything in like a week and a half. And I'm like, bro, let's go check this. And so he didn't know the FCC link to hit. So he went in, he put in his FRN, all was good. He had been issued a call sign, but he just didn't know that. And that's a great way to communicate with your
Yeah.
people. And you won't get that like if you're doing in-person testing because you leave them, you don't see them again, they don't have your communication info, then they're just kind of flapping out there in the breeze.
They're
So
probably not going to give you their phone number to text them later
exactly,
about with
exactly,
questions.
exactly. Well, I want to say thank y'all to everybody. Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour now, so I'm going to have to let y'all go because I don't want you to miss your next exciting presentation. But on behalf of myself, Brandon, and Tim, just thank y'all so much. And once again, shoot us an email, get the links off the PDF, come look at our club. If you've got any questions, we are more than happy to answer those for you and get you pointed in the right direction. So thank y'all very much, guys. And Tim, anything to say before I sign us off?
No, this has been great. Thanks everybody for the questions and watching the session.
Absolutely. Y'all have a wonderful morning, evening, night, afternoon, whatever it is. 73.
73.